I'd like to open the meeting of the Falmouth Public Schools School Committee January 14th, 2020 meeting. Pledge the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I remind everyone that this meeting is being telecast and recorded on Channel 14. I also remind any member of the public who wishes to make an audio or video recording of the open session of this meeting to first notify me as the chair, and I will then inform the public of the recording as required by the open meeting law. Fishbowl, please.
All righty.
Our student responses. This is excellent.
Responses. First up is Margaret from T-Ticket. My teacher encourages us to listen. I think that's good. Important. Very important. Next is Amelia from the Lawrence School. I love my principal because he keeps the school running. Also important.
That's good.
And last but not least, the high school. And we have Ryan from the high school. Clipper Time has helped me by letting me retake a quiz I missed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
We enjoy reading those each week, or every other week. The mission of the Falmouth Public Schools is to educate students so that they are engaged in their education in a way which develops their capacity to pursue their goals and foster lifelong learning. The three core beliefs which define us as a school system and enable us to accomplish our missions are: 1, continuous improvement of students, teachers, staff, and administration; 2, enthusiasm of teaching and learning; and 3, collaboration in teaching and learning. The role of the school committee is threefold: to write policy, to approve the operating budget, to hire the superintendent, and support her in carrying out her initiatives for the school district. Public comment. If anyone has a public comment, please limit comments to 2 minutes per individual to items not on the meeting agenda. There will be no debate or action taken on public comment items. The committee will take items under advisement, or the individual may request an item to be placed on future agenda. Any public comment on non-agenda items. Okay, we'll move forward. Student advisory, not this evening?
Yes, we did have a student
Okay.
that was scheduled for this evening, but I don't see him.
Okay.
If he does show up, perhaps we could move it to a different portion of the meeting.
We would be more than happy to do that. Presentation of VIP's mentor program. Tracy?
Hi, everybody. Actually, it's not me tonight. Yeah, lucky you. It's Lisa Morton. So let's have you here so I can turn the slides. How's that? If I use the chairs here. So hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Krieger, Director of Falmouth VIPS, and tonight you'll be hearing from Lisa Morton, who we're super fortunate to have as our VIPS Mentor Programs Leader. She joined us over the summer, and she's just, as you'll hear, kind of hit the ground running for sure. So just to sort of position mentoring, because that's what Lori asked us to speak on after she came to a board meeting this year and was heard from Lisa, is just to sort of remind you of sort of the mission of VIPS, which is up on the screen there, and also to let you know that as a board and staff over the years, we've been working to really sort of focus our programming into main programming areas, of which, of course, mentoring is a big one. But our other programming sort of falls under the financial literacy and career education umbrella, and then, of course, our health and wellness programs. And so we can always come back and talk about programming in that area, too. But I just wanted to remind you that those are our sort of main areas. And I also wanted to point out we have quite a few VIPS board members and volunteers here tonight, so including some mentors. So if you have questions later, they might be able to answer as well. All right, so started.
So good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me this evening to present our mentoring program. The mentoring program originally started back in the early 90s, 94, and it was originally called Project Rise, which was raising interest and self-esteem. And it was primarily focused for kindergarten through 6th graders. And as the program developed and there was more of a need within the school system, it broadened its range from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And the primary focus is to match adults within the community one-on-one with students. And the adults are recruited throughout the community. I train and I meet with them. And the way the program is introduced to them is that it's just a 1-hour commitment during the school year on school property during school hours. So, and the mentoring is no particular goal base. It's about supporting, creating self-esteem, and supporting the mentees, the students, we refer to them as mentees, and the adults as mentors. And it's supporting them in a role model, encouragement, and allowing them to develop relationships with positive role models, which they otherwise might not have in their day-to-day life. So about our mentees. Our mentees come from a recommendation from our school counselors. They can also be recommended from a parent or a teacher. And the mentee is, there is no specific criteria for why somebody becomes a mentee, except that they might have some quietness, some shyness, they might have some issues with having some social interaction, there might be attendance issues or so forth. So, but there again is no specific at-risk, but they might pose at-risk behavior that might roll into further issues without having a mentor support them. So we are looking to support our mentees in a way, because we have such a diverse population in our school system, that our mentors are then pulled from our community and to support them in ways, pardon me, in ways that, I just lost my train of thought, excuse me. But in ways that encourage them to continue to attend school, to be on time, to encourage their social behaviors and their relationships with their peers, as well as within the adults in the school system and their community. So our mentors, approximately 65% of them are retired or not working. We do recruit through several different ways. We have our VIPS website, we do advertisement, and when we also do outreach within the community, partnering with Big Brothers Big Sisters, doing a recruitment event. I also spent time at Mass Maritime earlier this year in the fall doing a recruitment event. I spent a couple of nights there just kind of spending time making, in a sense, setting up a table outside the cafeteria, doing a kind of one-on-one meet and greet. And anybody who was interested, therefore, would come on another evening to get more further information, and then I would train in place after that. Our biggest source of our recruitment is through finding word of mouth, through other mentors, and then other people in the community that have had a positive experience or have done this in the past. I've noticed the recruitment that I've done recently have been through retired teachers, maybe somebody who was a previous mentor and then they had stepped away from the program for whatever reason, and they have chose to come back to the meeting, to the mentor program because they had such a positive experience. So I know my mentors have things that come up in our lives, and I'm in a constantly recruiting basis. So this is a rolling enrollment. It's not, I place throughout the entire year, even all the way up to May. So my biggest need is that I'm constantly trying to find new people to be involved in the program. And as I mentioned earlier, a diverse population. I would really like to have mentors represent all different cultures and backgrounds as well as age groups, so that it really represents what we have in our student base. And that way we can have better matches. And the matches, as I said, are when I have information about a student and I have information about a mentor, the best way to make a match is find common interests and commonalities. So it's really important, and that creates that sustained long-term relationship past just an immediate, maybe this year. They go on throughout the school year. I have mentors that have been with their students for a number of years. I had a conversation just as I came in, as I met one of my mentors, that he even just had a brief meal, I think it was a lunch or a dinner, pardon me, with his mentor our mentee from last year, catching up and finding about how he's doing in college. So the point is that there is this like forging of a relationship. It goes further than just the school base, and it gives them this constant and this steady role model for them to look up to and really support them, even when they're into moving into college. I want to just outline what our current matches look like.
Looks better in your packet.
It does. So we have 96 matches right now and counting. Some of my mentors have multiple students that they support. I have outlined the existing matches and then rematches, and a rematch is maybe a mentor had to move out of the program and I needed to rematch the student with someone else, and new matches that exist for this year. And we do survey our mentees. We'd like to gather information, create some feedback so that we know that the program is successful in their eyes, and as we move forward, ways to create communication within the program as well as enhancing communication with the mentees and the mentors. So there's a little bit of feedback you can see on the slide and in your packet that, for instance, we had a very high percentage of mentees respond that my mentor helps me be the best I can be. So it's really nice to receive that feedback. Just for instance, I wanted to add that the mentors and mentees meet for about an hour or so. It's non-academic time, and usually they're doing gameplay, they're doing conversation, they could do crafting, they could do several other activities, they could be outside walking. So all of these things, playing on the playground, using the gymnasium, things like that. So I've worked with all the guidance counselors to identify places within the school that give them a little time away, or if there's any other open gym or any other places within the school that they can spend time depending on what the child really needs. If the child needs more activity or if the child is more wanting to sit and read a book, it's really, the activity is driven by the child. The other programs that Tracy mentioned, we do have a college mentoring program, and that is led by 2 other leaders, and that is matching the seniors with mentors, and the juniors will be matched in the spring as they move forward looking at colleges. The other mentor program is a peer mentor program that we have coordinated by the high school guidance counselors, and that's where the identified high school students will support students in the Morse Pond and Lawrence School. And we also have a pilot program called Pathways that's launching, and that will involve Lawrence students, and that will have more information to come. Did want to mention a little bit of where our funding comes from. A large majority of our funding is in kind through services, training, and school programs and leadership. We do have a state grant that we renew and we work towards every year. And then also other fundraising events through board fundraising, as well as local and private grants. And then the funding that we receive from the public school system. We also have an element where we share our VIPS model with other school districts. So as you can see, we've shared it locally with schools within our community in Barnstable County. We are working with the Mashpee Questionet School and the Barnstable Intermediate School to bring our model to theirs. So it's very nice to constantly be receiving inquiries about what we are doing, and so they would like to start pilot programs within their schools. So we give them information and we consult with them on their programs. And then lastly, January is Youth Mentoring Month. We're going to be up at the State House on January 23rd, celebrating with other mentoring programs and working towards legislation, getting more grant funding, and just all around showing appreciation for our mentors and the mentees and other organizations and so forth do bring their the students up to the State House. They get a tour, they get to meet their representative. So it's a really nice day to really appreciate and support mentoring. And we will also be doing other things throughout this month locally, encouraging the mentors and the mentees to show appreciation through thank yous and so forth. So I'll be working with the guidance counselors on rolling that out as well. We're working right now, as I said, continuing to recruit new mentors, and that's a big thing, and that's really what I really want to emphasize, that this is an ongoing, I'm constantly getting requests from guidance counselors for new mentors, and it would be really great to just always have some available so I can fill requests in a timely manner. There is a little bit of a lag between finding a mentor, interviewing them, training them, and having them assigned to a mentee. So it's nice to have available mentors to be able to assign. Okay. And if you have any questions, I'm always available.
Any comments from any member of the school committee?
I just have a quick question. First of all, thank you for the presentation. And I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to, you spoke about the diversity of our students and trying to find more mentors. Can you speak to any successes or challenges related to finding mentors in that regard?
I do have some challenges. I do, of course, have successes. It was really great to get a more diverse age population, especially when I worked with the cadets and placing some Mass Maritime cadets with maybe some students that are looking to do more kind of activities and getting out there and maybe running and being a little bit more activity based in terms of energetic. But I also have a lot of mentors that are willing to work with any student and at any activity level. We have some English as a second language. We also have worked to change some of, or translate some of our forms to other languages that are more accessible, so that even the parent-guardian forms that go home for parent permission are available in other languages. So that's much more accessible to some more of the population. So as the guidance counselors come to me with needs, that's when I'm going out there. So again, it's kind of new in terms of how broad the range is, but I will say I'd love to have more males. I would love to have a wider range in age. And just, it's really great to have different people, people from different backgrounds, be able to participate and support students.
It is a challenge though, and it has been for a long time, so we're always open to suggestions and ideas, places we could go speak, meet people, and sort of talk to them about the program, so if you have any ideas.
Thanks.
John?
First off, first I have to thank you. It's incredible what you're doing, and half the battle of anything is trying. And you guys are trying and empathetic and passionate, and you have a system, which is great. But I have to draw attention first up, before I say anything, Mr. Chair, at what a professional organization has name tags, and just make note, we could use these name tags for the school committee when we attend events. But have you thought about, or do you do any kind of a thing like a questionnaire of the mentors and a questionnaire of the mentees to kind of match up common interests and things like that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great.
So there is a whole training that goes behind. So when I do interview, when somebody initially contacts me, I do have a phone conversation with them to make sure that it is kind of, in a sense, a valid lead, is the best way to describe it. Somebody who is truly available and interested. and that can kind of work within our parameters and their time is available, because everybody comes in with the best of intention and just making sure that it is going to be something that can move forward. After that, we do meet and have an interview process, and I do have them fill out a questionnaire that has common interests. Some of it is being updated to make sure that it does kind of coincide with the interests of the students. There are certain things like what's your favorite animal, what's your hobby, what's your favorite television show, and sometimes I get feedback from mentors like, this is strange. But the point is, like, I'm not necessarily going to have the favorite show with a kindergartner or second grader, but it helps me at least find those commonalities. So yes, that is part of the matching process.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? Andrea?
This is obviously something that the district is very proud of and lucky to have. I did just want to ask one question, if you had a sense, when you showed your current matches, it was great to see all those new matches that you're putting in there, but I did notice that Lawrence has very few, as you see that sort of trend going, where the matches are building and they're even high at the high school. Is that because there's less need, you're getting less names? Is it because there's a difficulty in matching there? Is there something that's happening there that maybe we can help you with?
There seems to be a bit of a kind of an ebb and flow where we do have a lot of need down in the elementary school. We have a need across the board. I shouldn't just say specifically in the elementary school. I find when I met with the Lawrence guidance counselors, there was a bigger need for tutoring, and the time constraint for mentoring space and time is a bit of a constraint. We go from having a large period of lunch recess time in the Morse Pond School, and then moving into Lawrence, there's really just a lunch period time, and it's a lot of time that the students want to become more social and see their friends. I'm not saying that it's not happening, because we are actively looking for more mentors to go in, but I feel that if we can get more mentors involved in the elementary school and Morse Pond level, then hopefully we can move through the Lawrence and then move into the high school, if that makes sense. Matching in the Lawrence school, and that's why the peer mentoring in the high school level, having the seniors or the honor students go in and work with the Lawrence student seems to fill that need. So even though these numbers might be a little bit lower, there is that support, as well as the Pathways program that's being put in as another mentor-based program for that age level.
The schedule, though, is very challenging.
That is,
Lawrence.
I'm finding that, yes.
Yes, please.
My question was sort of along the same lines, that there are two, and East Falmouth has the same issue. So what I was curious about is if there's, like you said, there's certain things that make things challenging, like at Lawrence. But do you see, like, over time that there's no one school that consistently you just can't get enough matches for, that would be more of an issue? Or is it, sometimes up, sometimes down,
Yeah.
everybody's all over the place, or, yeah.
It is a little up and down.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work with all of the guidance counselors on an even level. So I check in with them. I'm constantly sending them updates. I'm constantly identifying mentors that are specifically asking for their school. So when I interview a mentor, they can say specifically the age level, if they like to work with a male or a female, whatever their comfort level is. And then if there's a specific school, or if some mentors just say, I'm open to anything, place me where there's the biggest need. And then I'm very specific about, are you willing to go to this school versus that school? And sometimes there's just time constraints or travel constraints if they're leaving a job or wherever they live. But the point is that I am trying to place it across the board. And then the flip side of it is encouraging and working with the guidance counselors. Sometimes they're calling me consistently with students that are available. Some guidance counselors don't necessarily like to keep a list. We don't want to disappoint a child, so once a permission slip goes home, then the parents and the family are kind of expecting to be matched in a timely manner, and that just leaves more room for disappointment, especially because some of these children are in other programs similar to Big Brother, Big Sister, and where they may be waiting for long periods of time for matching. So our time frame is an issue in terms of matching, but like I said, I'm constantly getting phone calls. So we will match, as I mentioned, right up until May, which is really important because the students are constantly in a need. So it just will ebb and flow between the schools. So I know that was a bit long-winded, but hopefully it answered your question.
Any other questions? Megan.
Any hopes of expanding the peer mentoring? I see, it seems like that might be a good way to kind of close in that gap of, you know, the people waiting for a long time. And I feel like especially for Morse Pond students to be matched with a high school student, they're going through so much developmentally that would be like a great match for them.
Yeah, we love the peer mentoring program. So that is one credit class through high school, so kids have to apply to that. There's an interview process. They have to be in good academic standing, good disciplinary standing. They always are. In fact, the kids, every year I train them, and it's like, if I could have picked the kids that would be the perfect peer mentors, that's who always shows up, and they're outstanding. More gets a little tricky. Right now I think we have 14. We've had as many as 20. It doesn't necessarily always increase the number of younger kids that are matched. A lot of times it's almost too many for the counselors to do, so what they'll do is they'll match them with a classroom. So it doesn't necessarily increase the number of one-on-ones, but we do love that program. It definitely helps us with the Lawrence issue of, you know, being a tough school to match kids at. So.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I have one comment. I am working with the Zorski Project, which I think is a fantastic name. I just love the respect that's shown to that gentleman who has done such a great job for years and years and years. So I'm working with a senior on the college mentoring, and I'm working with Meredith and Eric Turkington, and they've done, I think, an outstanding job of working with kids, working with the mentors, and the progression of the kids. And I think it's great, and obviously with Meredith and Eric, I'm sure that program will continue, and I think it's excellent. So again, thank you for that, for supporting that and continuing that. And if you have a chance, Tracy, could you introduce everybody to us that came with you? I want to put pressure on you.
Well, why don't we say VIPS board members? For
Yes, please.
Claudia and Susan here, and then we have mentors. We've got Bill and Barry. Any other mentors? No. Who's that?
Michael Joyce.
Oh, Michael. Sorry, Michael. So, and if you want to ask them questions about their own experiences, a lot of them have been mentoring for a while and have had, obviously, good enough experiences to come out and share them with you. So.
Oh, I have one.
Go ahead.
Has anybody got to like watch their student graduate? Like, do you get to go to graduation?
Some do. Yes. Yes.
That's fantastic.
It's
That
pretty
must
cool.
feel amazing.
Yes.
I just had breakfast with him earlier this week.
Yeah.
He's at WPI. He's doing phenomenally well.
Yes.
And it's just watching the transformation from when we first interacted and the realization that he could go to college and he could create this new existence for himself has just transformed the young man.
Yep. So that was the Zorski project.
Yes.
Mentoring. And then Michael is mentoring younger kids too. So, anything you wanted to say?
I find it fulfilling. My wife is now doing it. We have separate children over at T-Ticket, and just to draw it, I'd be willing to take on a second one.
Oh, that's great.
That's excellent.
Thank you.
It's interesting, my wife was going to walk her little girl back to class after the hour. The little girl said, "No, I don't want my friends to see you. You're mine."
That's cute.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you.
We actually do get that a lot. We'll have parents will call and they'll say, "How do I get a mentor for my student?" So yeah, and it's true. Our mentors are our best source of recruiters. I think we have a lot of spouses, a lot of neighbors, a lot of friends. So, but we can always use more. So anyone that comes to mind, please let us know. We'll reach out.
Any other comments?
just think it's awesome.
Thank you. I love PIPS.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Very good. Well done.
Oh, excellent, sounds good.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. Steve, are you going to be taping or anything tonight? Okay, thank you. Just wanted to check. Let's go to the next presentation of transportation contract and bid process. Patrick?
Sure. So just to preface this, first of all, I want to just recognize that Greg Kennedy is here. He's been our longtime director of transportation and is up at 4 in the morning, more days than not, even when it's not snowing. I provided everybody about a memo of a paragraph and a half or so, I mean a page and a half or so, just to give you some background. This project of putting our transportation contract out to bid got started in October, November. We're kind of midway through the entire process. It's a very long process, as it should be. It's effectively a $6 to $10 million contract that we will be awarding when you talk about a 3 to 5 year time frame. So, and it's very much governed by state procurement laws, so that's why it takes a while. This is the earliest that we've ever started this process. It just seems to be something, in order to get competitive bids, you have to start the process very early. So the first slide that is up there just is a recognition that this year we brought in the superintendent with some sort of introductions through the Cape Cod Collaborative, brought in a transportation consultant, Rich Labrie, who's been doing work across the state. He also happened to be doing work in Sandwich, so the business manager and I in Sandwich sort of found a way to consolidate some of the costs by working with him under the same time frame. He engaged in 2 projects with us, an efficiency review. The entire report, a 40 or 50 page report, we've seen a first draft, and we're going to work with him to get some of the edits and the errors out of that. But that is something that he's created. In the parentheses there, I just wanted to make sure that no one's hopes got raised. He didn't come up with any magic sauce about creating new efficiencies or new tiers that are new to us. They may be good ideas that we want to revisit, but there's nothing magical about this. His overall finding is that we do a pretty good job running our bus and transportation services in Falmouth. The second part was he did add significant value here in terms of updating and overseeing the transportation bid process. Our bid document, by definition, was 5 years old. And we also wanted to find a way to create some competition in this, and so we talked about ways to do that. So he helped us create an updated bid document that met all the state procurement laws and helped us to get some competitive discussions going. I sort of went through the timeline a little bit. This has been going on. The bid was posted in November. The bid opening happened in December. We had 4 or 5 people, 4 or 5 companies interested in us, but at the end we just received 3 bids. The winning bid, as you can see, is Lucini out of, I think it's West Bridgewater, 5-star. They have another name now. They just were purchased, and the incumbent First Student came in 3rd on this. We're in the process right now of due diligence in contract creation and contract negotiations.
Is that?
That's over 3 years.
Okay, that's what
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, sorry.
I just want to double check.
Yeah. So the lawyers will be are going to be involved looking at the contracts. The process, as I laid it out with Bill Lucini, is that we're expecting a contract from him or his attorney within the next week or two. We'll begin internal review, send it to Frank Duffy for review, and when all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, we'll send it to you all. Probably an informational session first, and then then the next session of vote. So I don't expect this to be fully signed, sealed, and delivered until March, effectively. The report on the efficiency study, I think, is another week or two out before that comes to us. I do want to sort of give the general public a little background on this. First Student has held the contract under some name for 15, 20 years probably. At least 5 years ago, First Student was practically, if not literally, the monopoly player across the region. Over the last 5 years, competition has come into the region. What will be changing, assuming contracts are finalized, is the contracting vendor. I expect if they choose to stay here, all of our bus drivers will be the same. There is always a supply and demand issue with bus drivers across not just the region or Massachusetts. It's a nationwide issue. So we value our bus drivers. They are governed by a union, by collective bargaining under their union, which is an independent union. The school district doesn't have anything to do with that. And state prevailing wages govern this also. So the expectation is that for a parent of a young child, the most important person in the morning is that bus driver. And I vividly remember it, and the most important person in the afternoon is that bus driver, knowing that your kid is on and off and safe. So the expectation and hope is that that isn't going to be changing much or at all for our parents across this community. So if you think of new questions over the next weeks or months, you're welcome to reach out to me because we will revisit this topic again and probably again.
Okay. Any questions? Terry?
Is it part of the regulation project that you have to take the lowest bidder?
Yeah, that's absolutely part of it. If
Can they adjust it, or do they have to go with their first and only bid?
Can the low bid, so
Can
that
the high bid could first
so you have to negotiate with the lowest bidder. And if for some reason, and it's really around language and in due diligence, can they perform? That is the first step. If you can't come to an agreement after a certain period of time and both parties agree to withdraw, then you go to the second lowest bidder. That's the process that would be available to us. But they can't sort of come in and say, we'd really like, sorry, we made a mistake with our bid. What our real bid is this.
Oh, that's what I meant. They can't.
No, they can't sort of do that again. And Lucini won both Falmouth and Sandwich on the same day.
Okay. Kelly?
So mine is sort of a budget question, so I don't know if you want to wait until the budget presentation or if you want to do it now.
If it's about transportation.
It is.
Do it now.
So, yeah, because it is an increase. So
Yep.
are we getting this, do we get this information early enough that
Yes.
that the budget for next year
Yes.
is
The
not going to be like,
day
"Ah."
before we print it.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Andrea?
You had said something that this could be in the 6 to 10 million range. What was that?
Yep. So 3 years, $2 million a year for 3 years. You do have, in most of these contracts, And I assume it'll look like this going forward. You have, the school committee has the right to add additional years, 2 additional years after the 3 years.
Okay.
And we did that with first student, for example.
Okay.
Okay, and then speaking of the contract, and you were talking about keeping bus drivers, is that something that could be put into the contract?
Since it's an independent vendor, we can't stipulate who they're going to hire. There are other protections for drivers in labor that by state law, by collective bargaining and by prevailing wages. And guess what? The simplest thing is supply and demand. That will make sure that our drivers stick around.
Okay, and that efficiency report, so that'll be coming out and that'll be circulated?
Yeah, sure. Very exciting reading.
Can't wait. Thanks.
Melissa.
So I have a couple questions.
Yep.
I too am concerned about our bus drivers. A lot of them are Falmouth residents, and they know the roads, they know the neighborhoods, the children, the families.
Sure.
Families have learned, have grown up with bus drivers. So of course I'm concerned for their livelihood.
Sure. So I guess with it,
just don't want it to all be, like, I get that it's about the dollars,
we're management, but if I was a bus driver, I would think we're always looking for bus drivers. The supply and demand of bus drivers is on the demand side, meaning every district is always looking for bus drivers. So if someone wants to continue working in Falmouth and that's their choice, they're going to have a job as long as they remain in good standing with bus, whatever the licensures programs are.
And I guess I was under the assumption that with the consultant that we were going to have some sort of magic equation.
There is no magic.
To our.
No.
Perhaps
I'm just, maybe you'll see something magical in the report, 50-page report but it seemed pretty similar to what we've discussed in the past.
So maybe perhaps in the future we can look at, and I know that I'm going to get laser beams from Mr. Kennedy, but I know that there are buses that are not full.
You'll understand that issue when you read the report.
I know it's going to be like we have to provide the option for children. I get that.
No, it's you'll read that.
I feel like it's like read my book.
No, you'll understand better when you see sort of the graphs and the magical information.
I'm also speaking for the people that are not going to have privy to the report.
Okay.
And I'm concerned because
It's a public report.
Yeah.
But there are people that ask us, not just myself, every day, how come I see empty buses? How come,
Okay.
So that was one of the questions. So we had a list of questions before that we met with the consultant. That was one of them that we wanted to know if that was one of the efficiency areas that we wanted to know about. So and so it was studied and analyzed, and we verbally have gotten a report back on that, but we do want to see it in writing. So we get that. But that was definitely one of the questions.
Yes. Well, I don't want to volunteer Rich
$6,313,155. Empty seats on a bus daily I'm seeing.
There's always trade-offs when you make decisions about transportation.
Okay.
One is the level service that we offer in Falmouth.
Correct.
And so if we continue to to provide that level of service and the not only, it's the pickups, right? I mean, so the close to home pickups that we have, and we continue to offer that, then, one of the things I learned, obviously being new, and I had several questions that came through. And so if we're going to continue with that level, that's one of the byproducts of that.
So, and I think it would be really helpful for us to understand some of those things better, because I get that question too. And being able to say, well, the reason that you see some buses that look empty is because we do these things that we don't necessarily have to do, but we have chosen to do them. It just makes for a better
answer then, I think there's which is what my answer is often like, I don't know, a lot of people drove their kids because it was raining. I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
I certainly understand it better now.
yeah, and that'll be
That's
great for
important.
us as well to be able to share that
We
with
also have a
people.
very tight schedule between the high school,
The turnaround.
Yeah.
Lawrence
Building to building.
and Morton Pond, and then our 4 elementary schools.
Yep.
That it's just the number of buses are required if we're going to get the students in on time and keep that and not expand the day, right? So there's several reasons that kind of go into that, but
I feel like we
it's
kind of
very
touched
good.
on them when we did the school start time, and I feel like I have a healthy grasp of it. I was just really hopeful with the consultant that they were going to find some magical equation that we didn't need. It remind me how many buses we have?
27 over the course of 3 tiers.
Right.
17 is the first tier, 27 are the second and third tier.
So what we can do publicly too is when the report's in, we can actually do a presentation on the report.
That'd be
So
great.
You'll get
That'd
the
be
full
excellent.
report, we can
That'd
make
be
it
great.
available, but
I think that'd be helpful.
we can go through and provide that information.
Okay.
John?
Thank you.
I'm actually glad that phrase got brought up again, because I was going to lead off with my comment, was that we do actually have magic for efficiencies, and he's sitting right over there, Greg Kennedy, and with the excellent team that he has working for him too, including all the drivers. With wearing my collaborative hat for a second, happy to recommend someone to be supportive of both you and Laurie and Greg with helping to come to the conclusions, and just wanted to explain the reason the collaborative didn't kind of throw our hat in the ring in it, because right now we have districts, we have Nantucket, Truro, Mashpee, Warren, Nauset, and Monmouth.
Right.
So we really just couldn't do it. So I didn't want the town to feel as if that we didn't have interest, as wearing that we had of that, that the collaborative didn't have interest in it, definitely at some point down the line. As far as the folks getting jobs in districts that we've taken over from other companies, you've seen the same drivers, will go and get the other job, because you're going to the same pool, you're casting out that same net in the same pond. You're not going to really have somebody from Plymouth come down necessarily. You could, but the folks that are in that same area, that are in that proficiency, they have the skills, they have the CDL license and everything. The good news is, because I'd like to see that too, because we have great drivers and people that are very committed to the town. But just, again, I look at it that the third party looking at it and analyzing things and have concluded that we're doing a good job or a great job, then from the parameters that are, they are analyzing in apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So kudos to everybody involved in the district, so thank you.
Anyone else? Greg, I'll open this up to your drivers or who's here, because I'm sure this is a very important concern for a lot of people. So if you'd like to speak, sir, I'll give you.
To address the committee.
Yes.
My name is Dave Belzanowski. I'm a Falmouth resident, a taxpayer, and a driver for First Student. I'm here tonight representing the drivers, and I'm happy to hear what I've learned tonight, which is much more than I knew when I prepared my statement, if you will. I'm not here in a proxy sense representing our entire drivers, because quite honestly, we didn't discuss what I was about to say or my opinion. But I do represent a group of highly trained, well-qualified, professional, dedicated, caring Falmouth drivers, majority of which are Falmouth residents and Falmouth taxpayers as well. And our biggest concern with the bid process was jobs, of course. And it was somewhat addressed, but I think still leaves us up in the air, and we recognize that. Our drivers are entrusted with taking care of your children, your grandchildren, and we do it safely and in a very caring way. And safety is the key word here, and it's one that's been ingrained to us by First Student. Most of us have trained with First Student and have only driven with First Student, and safety is their primary goal, And it's a very high on their policy and standards level. Their mantra, if it's not safe to do, just don't do it. And then safety is the key word. I believe the first student's safety record speaks for itself, and it shows their dedication to this commitment. As a bus driver, we're more than just transporters. We're protectors of students. We protect them from outside sources, also from fellow students who may be bullying or abusive. We protect the younger from the older, try to protect them from the bad influences. We tend to minor injuries when the kids are hurt, as if they're our own children. We make sure that school nurses follow up on any injuries that we learn of or illnesses. We tie shoes. We help with jackets. We find lost hats and scarves and books and phones. We clean up after their illnesses on the bus. Well, not a pleasure. And we're often the first line of discipline, which is then turned over to the school authorities, of course. We are also the eyes and ears for the town of Falmouth. Falmouth Police at any point in time have 4 or 5 cruisers on duty. In the morning, we have 27 buses and drivers, and then 27 also in the afternoon. And we're routinely reporting to the town, whether it's DPW or the police, about accidents and violations and questionable characters down wires, trees, etc., etc. Clearly, the school committee has been tasked with a project to entertain competitive bids. And although I was generally familiar with the state procurement laws, I was under the impression that there was going to be a due diligence period where the corporations, the bidders, were compared one against the other, as opposed to just taking the low bid and progressing with them alone to start with.
That's part of the process. That's the process. So it's the bid process, due diligence, contract. So we're in the due diligence process.
But are you comparing apples to apples?
Yeah, there's specific things that you have that you're allowed to compare.
Okay. I mean, obviously, I don't tell you how to do your job as far as due diligence is concerned, but the assets of a company, the age, the quality, the spares. First student I know, when they run the Falmouth Road Race, they're tasked to bring 120, 130 buses here and drivers to move 12,000 people in the morning. And they have the ability to do that. They have a very good reputation business-wise and an incredible one as far as safety is concerned. Management and reputation, I honestly don't know anything about our competition, but I do know what the first student brings to bear, and it's all good. And from the study that I think you were referencing, I think that addresses what we do. The references that the companies provide you, I'm sure you follow up on at a point in time. I mean, maybe one at a time, but not next to each other. But you have to compare, I think, positive references as well as some negative references, and not everybody has all positive. Maintenance of the assets, incredibly important. I mean, we have a Cracker Jack maintenance, Gold Star maintenance facility. And prior to the current buses we were driving just shy of 10-year-old buses. And they did an absolutely incredible job keeping those on the road and spares to replace them when we did have issues. The issue of DOT inspection record is important, and I don't think anybody has as good a record as First Student does in that regard. The question of change, and I'm going to use the reason for going out for bids. I do understand the dollars and cents point of view, and change can be both good and bad, but you don't know whether it's good or bad until 2 or 3 years down the road. Change for cause or reason certainly can be justified. However, change for the sake of change or change for a relatively small amount of dollar differentials may not be in my mind. I mean, from what the figures I've just seen for the first time, am I wrong in saying that there was just a 5% difference between top and bottom?
We had competition this time.
But it,
We
you know,
had
it was
competition.
not that big, not as big as I would have expected, to be perfectly honest with you. So a relatively small differential, I think there are other factors that come to bear where certain companies, I'll use First Student, provides added value that has to be quantified. My comment, drivers were, in my mind, to be the first affected by change. And quite honestly, coming in here tonight, and yet probably going out as well, we still don't know who we're going to be working for, if we're going to be working come September next year. Our contract expires in July, and beyond that, we're in the no man's land. Change has a cascading effect. Change at the transport management level and their relationship with the Falmouth schools, Mr. Kennedy's office. There's going to be obviously a reinventing the relationship there. Our bus dispatcher does an incredible job with the schools, speaking with the vice principals as far as the disciplinary issues, speaking with the secretarial staff about dealing with children who miss their buses, who take the wrong buses, whose parents don't meet them at the drop-off, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all relationships that are going to change. The one group that does not care for change at all, as you mentioned, are the parents, particularly of the younger children. They rely on the safety reputation of the company and also the care, and they entrust the care of their 5, 6, 7-year-old children to a known, recognized entity, that driver that shows up in the morning and in the afternoon. The parents demand safety, confidence, consistency, and continuity, which I think should also be the goals of the committee, which I'm sure they are. As a taxpayer, I completely understand the value of saving $1. Every dollar you save saves me a little bit of money. I understand that. But I don't want to be so short, I wouldn't want to be so short-sighted as to sacrifice quality, safety, and caring for our children for a relatively small differential in the price. I mean, if that's what it really boils down to. I was just playing with the numbers, and you mentioned we do run or operate 27 routes twice a day for 180 days a year. That's 9,720 routes per year. Times 3, that's 29,160 routes over a 3-year period. And if you divide that into the little bit of a differential that we're talking about, we're only talking about $9 a route. That's what it really boils down to. Not so much money in that regard. The bottom line that I had prepared to state was that I would ask the committee to take all factors into consideration in awarding this contract. And I think you've made me understand the legal provisions that are established by the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And I guess we certainly have to abide by those. But I do expect the committee to analyze each and every company on an equal basis, if you will, as their time arrives.
Yep. Massachusetts Chapter 30B is the procurement laws. It is the largest, most cumbersome procurement law statute in the nation. So it's very specific how we handle these types of bid processes. As you pointed out, the due diligence process and the contractual process.
Mayor, I have just one quick question. I was doing a little research on the 30B myself in the last day or so. And when the bids came in and they were opened, was that not to be made public at that point in time?
It was a bid process that was public. It was posted.
Where was it posted? I'm just curious because I was unable to find it.
It's posted in 3 areas. The whole process is posted on you're going to have to help me, the town website, the newspaper, the Services and Good Bulletin by the state, and Combis.
Published in Falmouth Enterprise?
Yeah. Yeah, the bid notice was
The bid
published.
notice?
Yeah.
But I thought the opening of the bids was to be open and public.
And it was open in public, so that's part of the bid notice, that the date of the opening was from the very beginning.
I never saw it enter the Falmouth Enterprise.
The bid notice, so everything that we did was by the letter of the
Okay.
law.
I was looking for it and I couldn't find it, so that's why
Okay.
I was unaware who was the low bidder or,
Okay.
all right.
So I'd just like to add a couple things. We've been very happy with First Student, and based on the efficiency report.
May I interrupt you just 1 second? I have a couple of my colleagues here and also our location managers here, so you might address them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm addressing everyone and everyone at home.
I just wanted to know.
I'm addressing everyone. We've been happy as the efficiency report identified that we have been running a very good service for our Falmouth families. This going out to bid was not because of money. We are required by law to go out by bid, so it was not by choice. We had a 3-year contract and we extended 2 more years. We went as far as we could with the contract with First Student. At which point, at the end of the 5th year, we had to go out and we have to follow the procurement law. The procurement law does indicate that the lowest bid has to be looked at, and as they go through the due diligence, if they meet every requirement, we cannot move to look at the next bid. So it's not a choice of looking at all 3. There is a process of looking at the lowest. If they meet every requirement, they win the bid. So it's not about the school committee being able to choose. I don't disagree with anything you said. Our very first and priority is the safety of our students. We also value very deeply all the drivers in Falmouth. I will say that I've never worked anywhere where we have had so few problems on the buses, nor have as many bus drivers that go above and beyond to do their job. So we are very pleased. I just want to make it very clear that this was not about saving money. This was not about going out. This was about what we had to do by law.
Understood.
Okay. But we
Thank
do value it.
Thank you for your comments, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other comments by anybody? And thank you.
I think we have another comment.
Oh, another comment?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we have another comment.
Thank you.
Well, this is a very interesting way of how it goes down, because I've been a bus driver for 33 years, and I've been in Falmouth for over 20 years, doing the same bus route for about 14 years. And I've had different bus companies come in down there, and different management teams, and I will tell you that my heart is just breaking if First Student doesn't get it. It's a well-greased machine over there. From the management to the dispatch to the maintenance, I fuel the buses. I'm not sure I'll stay in Falmouth if someone else comes in, because we have a safety bonus if we don't take over more than 5 days. Our safety is accidents if they're preventable. I'm not sure a lower bidder will come in and give us that type of benefits that we get. I have my health insurance through First Student. I'm not sure a smaller mom and pop shop will have that. So I'm from the heart. This really is disrupting that. I've tried to make a career out of an industry that is just temporary here. You're here for 3-4 years, you're here for 5 years. It's just kind of, so that's just my opinion of it, that I'll be very heartbroken if First Student doesn't stay.
Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you for service, though.
Anyone else?
I'll just make one quick comment.
It's fine.
I'm the location manager in the with First Student, but you know, I think just in response to the drivers that you've heard from today, overall you have a really good group of drivers for you. It started, you know, I came to the town in 2015. It was a little bit of a rocky start. Fortunately, we had the resources, being a large company, to pull from other areas just to kind of keep the consistency, keep things moving, getting kids to school on time. Dave's touched upon anything that I would have said above and beyond, but a lot of these drivers, they do take it to heart. So as we approach the end of this term of a contract, you know, I owe a lot of respect to the drivers as well as the community as well. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Mike, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? We'll move on. And again, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your comments. Student services, Brian?
Okay, so tonight I'd like to present out some exciting changes we have going on in the office of the Department of Education's Office of Public School Monitoring. So I wanted to speak this evening about the tiered focus monitoring process that we will now be entering into.
Thank you for your comments.
I wanted to just review the scope of the tiered focus monitoring. So the tiered focus monitoring, which you will come to know as the TFM, was previously known as the Coordinated Program Review, also more probably commonly known as the CPR review. So the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, housed within that is the Office of Public School Monitoring, and so they've made some of the changes to the Coordinated Program Review. So within the previous model, we're all familiar with that. There was the 6-year cycle that really focused a little more on compliance auditing. What's happening now is, and through that model, when I first started here last year, I came and reported out about where we stood with our with our corrective action plan from our coordinated program review. We had just finished up that cycle. Falmouth had done very, very well in that. What falls under the Office of Student Services would be special education and civil rights. Within special education, Falmouth was found to be implementing 58 out of the 61 criteria in special education, with only 3 criterion that were rated as partially implemented. In the civil rights, we had 26 out of the 28 criterion that were implemented, with only 2 criterion rated and partially implemented. From that, we had to participate in a corrective action plan where we reported to the Department of Education what we were going to do to ensure that where we were only partially implemented, that we would become fully implemented. We went through that process, we submitted our documentation, and we were found to be fully implemented with no further action done. So kudos to Falmouth and everyone that made that happen. So as we move forward now, the new model that will be happening with the tiered focus monitoring, so all districts and charter schools will now be reviewed every 3 years through the process. And this process, so this review is going to emphasize elements most tied to the student outcomes, and that's a big difference. And they'll be alternating the focus of each review on whether you're in Group A, Cohort A, which has a specific set of universal standards, or Cohort Group B, which also has a different set of universal standards. Okay, so one of the significant changes through this, and as I said, it's really looking to become more student outcome oriented. So the Department of Education has 3 priorities in which what they would like to move. So first is to move towards an outcome driven process, a little bit different than kind of more of a compliance one size fits all. Again, like I said, move away from that one size fits all approach to monitoring. And they're looking to develop a stronger orientation towards technical assistance and district support. So through that approach, what they're looking for is, for that first priority, is really corresponding technical assistance. So what happens is, there is within the new cycle, so our old cycle, 6 years, very compliance driven, and we had any areas in which we were not fully implemented, so partial implementation, not implementation, or not appropriate, then we would have a corrective action plan. with our new tiered focus monitoring, we're going to be having a continuous improvement monitoring cycle or a corrected action, again, a corrective action plan. So with the new model, there's 4 tiers. There's tier 1 and tier 2, which are considered no risk, low risk, and tiers 3 and 4, which are the continuum of the risks that they see of the programming for both within special education and civil rights. So with the continuous improvement monitoring plan for tiers 1 and 2, and the corrective action plan that we may have, what the Department of Education is now going to be doing, more specifically the Office of Public School Monitoring, is they'll have technical assistants that are designed, and I apologize, I wrote LEAs on my slide without clarifying what that is with our world of jargon. So LEAs are a local educational authority, so that means the district, if you will. So to support districts with both time and resources, which was very different than how the approach of the old process was just, we're auditing you, this is what we find, fix it with, you know, all standards being equal. Now they're looking at how do we make sure that based off of the students that we have, the areas that we're being looking at, what can the district do to help us continue to improve our process through, again, through resources, through time, through more almost PD, if you will, to the districts. In priority 2, moving away from that one size fits all, the Office of Public School Monitoring is going to target their monitoring, and again, like I said, that they're going to be looking more at where there's a demonstrated area of need for a district, and focus their resources and time and technical assistance in that area. And aligning to, their approach number 3, which is aligning to the development of stronger orientation towards the technical assistance and district support. Every local education authority, every district in every single tier, so tier 1, 2, 3, and 4, will receive support from the Office of Public School Monitoring. And this can include something as basic as general guidance, regional meetings, and district-specific support. One of the things that the Department of Education is doing right now is holding regional special education meetings for all the directors of special education. And what they do is members of the department, including Russell Johnson, the Associate Commissioner who oversees this office, he brings a team out, and so we have meetings, regional meetings, in which we discuss things very relevant to special education programming, monitoring. So this is another area that they're doing, but then in addition to that, they will target whatever the particular need of any district demonstrated need and be able to work with the districts in that fashion. So just an overview of the process. In Group A, the universal standards will address student identification, again, special education when we think about the areas of special education as well as civil rights. So student identification, the IEP development, programming and support services, and equal opportunity. So that's under cohort Group A. Those are the universal standards. So Group B, the universal standards will address licensure and professional development, parent, student, and community engagement, facilities and classroom observations, oversight, time and learning, and equal access. So, in addition to the universal standards housed within both A and B, groups A and B, there's also going to be some identified targeted standards that will be assessed in addition to those universal standards. So they're over and beyond what those particular universal standards that I just shared through. So important to note, here in Falmouth, we've been identified as a member of cohort B, so Group B. So this year, we'll be conducting our self-assessment, and we will have one targeted standard, and that is related to discipline of students with special education, students with disabilities. With specific, as it relates specifically to the discipline of students with disability, the Department of Education is using specific criteria such as there's a problem resolution system, which is PRS, formerly known as the PQA, the Program Quality Assurance. So we're, like I said, we've got a lot of jargon, we've got a lot of changes, we've got, and again, the focus truly is to move into not only identifying areas of need, but how do we get better? How do we program? How do we ensure that we're meeting the needs of all? So anytime a district may have either a higher, for the targeted standards, they may have higher numbers in a particular area. There may be some things that kind of check the box as to why people would move into having a targeted standard. So in discipline, they would be looking at if there were any PRS complaints that were sent into the Department of Education, or if districts have to utilize we call it an interim alternative education setting, and that happens when there's a discipline that hits a criteria for, it's considered a special circumstance, and based off of the student with the disability, does it require that based off of the incident that happened that they may require a short-term interim alternative education setting. So those are some of the markers, the criteria that the department uses. Okay, so in this next slide, this shows the progression. So we've gone from a 6-year cycle to 2 3-year cycles. So if you think about it over the course of still a 6-year cycle, you'll see Group A. So Falmouth was one of the districts that was finished up in the very last year of a cycle from the coordinated program review. There are some districts that are already out ahead of us that because of where their coordinated program review cycle, they're already in the new tiered focus monitoring system. So they are considered to be in cohort A, Group A. So they may be somewhere along self-assessment or year 2 on-site monitoring. So if you'll notice that we talked about kind of up top on the outer ring, talks about those universal standards. Year 1 is a self-assessment. Year 2, on-site monitoring and reporting. Year 3, continuous monitoring. Then you roll into year 4 of the new tiered focus monitoring cycle, if you will. It's year 4, but for Falmouth, this is where we're entering into the cycle. So technically it's year 4, but it is our first year of the cycle. It is the first phase of Group B, and it's our self-assessment. Next year, the department will be coming out and doing their on-site monitoring and reporting, and then our 3rd year will be that continuous monitoring for the universal standards as indicated in Group B. And then we roll back into a self-assessment for the other universal standards. So specifically in our review, what will be happening is that there'll be a document review, primarily in civil rights, and some special ed criterion. So if you notice back, it was really about professional development, licensure, those types of things. So again, a little bit more in the civil rights. They will have some facility observations. They will be conducting interviews with our Special Ed Parent Advisory Council, and they'll also be doing some parent surveys out to other parent advisory councils within the district, and then they'll be looking at our student discipline data. In just kind of sense of where we are time frame. So because this is our first year, it's the self-assessment. The district did some training groups with all of us. They opened up the portal, the security portal for the Department of Education, in which districts can go in and actually look to see the criterion that all's in there. It was opened on December 18th, and we will be submitting it by May 1st. So, in a nutshell, that is our new monitoring system. I'd be happy to answer any questions that I may have. Yes?
Before there's questions, I just want to say we have the perfect person for this job. She is extremely detail-oriented, and she loves what she does. So, we're in good hands.
Okay, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was I supposed to go through you, Mr. Elder?
I was trying to...
No, go ahead. I was just looking at some things as well. I'm still trying to figure out...
I thought you were sleeping all the time.
No, I'm still trying to figure out TFM versus CPR, and I'm not sure about CPR, what that really means. So there are a few things that had me spinning there.
Okay. So if I could slow any of that
But
down,
Terry,
please
I will
let me know.
recognize you to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I mean, it's really hard to shuffle out what you, as we all been alluding here to. So there's two things. One, since they seemed, you mentioned achievement rather than technicalities you may not be meeting, right? So the focus is changing. So, and they're offering you technical assistance. So I say, so for example, I remember 2 or 3 years ago there was a trouble of not meeting enough minutes for ELL kids. So we were dinged for that. So in other words, now if those ELL kids do well, that won't matter anymore. Am I reading that correct?
No.
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 Unfortunately not. We still...
So,
And just for a differential, so students, just to make it a little more comprehensive and complicated. So Office of Student Services is charged with the special education and the civil rights monitoring of this, and ELL and career voc tech education falls under the Office of Teaching and Learning.
And they have not updated our process yet, so we're waiting for whatever our new version of CPR will be. So, but we have not yet qualified for the tiered focus monitoring.
oh, see, I thought that was part of the
It's part of the
comprehensive review.
It was. You're
It used to
absolutely
be
right.
all four. So it was special ed, civil rights, and ELD and vocational.
Okay.
They've forced us apart. So the two
But we
that
still work very
student
closely.
services overseas have been clarified for them. We're waiting for our new process.
Okay. The other thing was, so you have a targeted standard related to discipline. Does that mean that a special education child that's disciplined, the person disciplined will have more paperwork then to explain it further, or?
What they're looking at, one of the big areas that the Department of Education in and of itself is looking at making sure, and it's with civil rights as well, but making sure that we are not disproportionately identifying groups, whether it's the identification of special education, whether that we're disciplining specific groups, you know, of our subgroups, the subgroups as we report out for MCAS and other reporting. They're looking to make sure that there's access and equity across all of those. So in regards to the discipline, it's not discipline across all, well, in order to look at your discipline of your students with disabilities, you're certainly going to have to look across your discipline records of all. But this specifically is looking to make sure that we don't have any unequitable practices in the district as it relates to disciplining students with disabilities.
Andrea.
We absolutely
exactly.
want to do. And that's why these targeted standards, they're not doing, like they have those, like when I was saying about how they're identifying it, because they want to look in, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to find that there's, you know, an area of significant compliance or monitoring there. But again, those resources of then what can they do, targeted guidance, targeted assistance from the Department of Education to ensure if we do have an area that we need to improve or we need growth in, that they're going to assist us versus the old model where it was just like, you know, dang, fix it. That they're going to look toward time and resources to help departments, to help districts move through that.
Andrea?
So it's getting clear. I still have a couple questions.
Sure.
So trying to follow along with that. So for the targeted standard that you were just talking about, is that something that we chose as a district,
No.
or it was given to us?
It was given to us.
And that was based on?
So either
Some
they're going to
numbers?
look at it and they could either, if our discipline records exceed, our discipline of students with disabilities was to exceed 2 times the rate of the state rate of discipline of students with disabilities, if the department had any instances where someone filed a PRS, a problem resolution system complaint to the Department of Education in regards to student discipline, and or if there's any instances where there's students that were placed in an interim alternative educational setting. Those are some of the markers that would flag going to those, to a targeted standard.
So they saw those, then chose that.
So then what they want to do is then they want to look in, because there may be a higher rate of perhaps students with disabilities that are being disciplined, but when we look into that, we may not find that it's an unequitable practice. It may just happen to be the you know, based off of the rate of students being disciplined, there may all of our practices may very much be in line and equitable, but we just had a higher number for in a particular year at a particular time. So they want to, the targeted standards are to go in and really look to assess, is there a problem? Or is there, and if there is, we need to address it. And if there really truly is, then how do we make sure that we're educating everyone so that we do not have an equitable process? If I can just draw a parallel that might be a little bit easier to understand, another thing that they look at is for our students that take the MCAS, alternative assessment, the portfolios, you can't exceed 1.5% of your overall population of students with disabilities. If you were to go over that, they start looking at you. You know, they really dig into that because they want to ensure that we are not over-identifying students that are using the alt assessment as their form of progress monitoring. Now, you may have a district where you have higher numbers, you have more in-district programming, you know, for a variety of different reasons, you have a larger cohort of students. When we look into that, it is not an equitable process that we have. It could be that we have a higher number of students that truly need that level of, you know, that programming. And that's what they want to do with the targeted standards. One, to identify if in fact there is, and if in fact there is, how do we make sure that we correct that? Does that help to
that definitely
clarify
does.
that?
Yeah. So based on the fact that from the last CPR that and the corrective actions that everything was fully implemented, how do you feel like this new system will work for us? Do you see benefits to it versus the old system? What do you think that will get out of it?
Having not actually gone through it yet, I think that when I look at this, what they're really doing is they're also looking to reduce redundancy in the process. So I think that that's wonderful for all of the districts, especially when you think, you know, time and resources of staff. Conducting a coordinated program review, pulling all the data, doing the auditing, doing the analysis, the monitoring, all of that, submitting all the documentation is a very heavy load on districts. So looking to make sure that they're reducing some of the redundancy in the process, I think is wonderful. I think, again, I may be taking some liberties here, but I almost look at it where they moved when they shifted with the educator evaluation system, and the new model is really to look at reflection and be, you know, being able to do self-assessments and making sure that you're aware of the practices that you have and how do you get better versus just a more of a, this, you did this right, you did that wrong, you did this right, you did that wrong, but how do you then grow from that versus just correcting it? So will it ultimately, if you look at the criterion that they're looking at, it still feels as though they're looking in the same types of areas. So I think that that's important because I think those are areas that we absolutely should be making sure that we're monitoring and we're constantly readjusting based off of the student population that we have in front of us, the demographics and the student population that we have in front of us. What I do like is the fact that there's it appears to be that there's going to be more additional resources from the Department of Education to kind of to help usher districts through if there are areas which they need support. So I don't know if that really answered what you were looking for, but that's kind of my perspective on this.
Do those resources come in the aspects of professional development? And how are you being supported with this program through the state?
So it's through the office, so the Department of Education is through the Office of Public School Monitoring. as you go through this, and we're identified in, districts get identified as tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So tier 1 means you're all in compliance. You're just going to do your continuous monitoring, progress monitoring in that cycle. They're probably not going to offer much assistance to you because you're in good shape. You get down to tier 2 where you've got some identified corrective action components to that. They may help you with helping to better understand that. The regional meetings, those are so it wouldn't be, if you're in tier 1 and tier 2, it wouldn't be as specific to that they're going to come to Falmouth and help you out, but you would be invited, the districts would be invited to participate in the regional meetings. We're part of the Southeast Coast region. Throughout the year, go to our regional meetings, and they're housed in Rockland, the North River Collaborative Conference Center. We actually have one next week. This meeting, the winter meeting, if you will, is actually going to be web-based. So it will be, and what happens, like I said, is Russell Johnson, all of the different departments out of the public school monitoring are actually present at that meeting. They provide almost updates or information sharing in that. There's opportunities where you can ask questions. You're in a room full of other people charged with the same responsibilities, so you have a little bit of that, the peer colleague to colleague abilities to talk about, how do you handle it in your district? What is a challenge? What is what would be a strategy? Does anyone have any recommendations on how to move things like that? And then if you really get into tier 2 and tier 3, then those are areas where similar to the old coordinated program review, we will be provided with a facilitator, if you will, who will be in charge of our tiered focus monitoring, and they will be our point person. So they would be the person that if we need them to come out to the district, if we need more time, if we need to meet with them, if they can provide us with some resources, through, right now it's a web-based monitoring system, so everything's uploaded into the security portal for right now. So it would be in regards to time and resources, those would be some of the ways that they will be addressing it.
So you will get on-site visits and you will get on-site monitoring and on-site support?
If we have, yes, depending on, as we go through the cycle, depending on the level of need.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
John?
Any of the measurement systems that we have, be it for general education or special education, are always a little challenging to keep track of and everything. I appreciate your efforts in educating us on it. But where the rubber meets the road is really with amazing people that have a passion for what they do and a passion for making an impact on the students and families. And I'm going to put somebody on the spot over here. And we have Melissa Brown, who formerly was Melissa Hurley when my daughter was in her class at the MALC program over at Morse Pond. Just an incredible person and made an impact on my family. And through all of the numbers and everything, the great people that we have in the district, and Melissa's definitely one of them, one of the tops of my list. And I just have to congratulate her and thank you for coming out tonight. It shows her interest and her passion.
Yes, thank you very much for recognizing not only Melissa, but all of the amazing staff that we have that are working in the best interest of our students. Thank you. And thank you, Melissa.
Any other questions?
Thank you for explaining that, because I read this twice and
And as we go, this is new for everyone, so I'm going to be on a learning journey as well. But as with anything, if anything ever comes up and people have questions, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to do my best to help explain this process.
Thank you.
Joan, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Presentation of budget overview?
Yes, so we just completed this presentation in December. And as I learned last year when I came, we do this often.
Yes, we do.
Through this budget season, so bear with us. We'll be presenting again tonight, and we'll be presenting again in the next meeting in January. We already have our 4 community meetings set up, and we'll be out and about. We'll make sure that everyone has the dates as soon as we get complete confirmation that we have those dates set. We'll have Sharon send those out to you so you know where we're going to be also presenting in the community. But so here we go again.
or have a partner.
Well, that's okay, because they got in front of them. I'm gonna just talk. I can talk. All right, so, of course, the entire budget is based on our strategic plan, our framework for student success, and focused on the objectives to help us get through what we need to make sure that we're actually implementing to the quality level that we need to. We analyze our needs and based on what those needs are, and we do that process with our principals. The principals do that process with the school councils, with their staff, and then we have many discussions about what that is. The current conditions, as we talked about before, federal grants are flat. Our enrollment is expected to decline slightly. School choice is expected to continue to grow. And I do want to say that's because Falmouth is the best place to be, and we're very proud of that. We constantly look to keep our own and to bring in other families as well that's choosing Falmouth, and that's a very proud thing to do. So we are still in negotiating the bargaining agreements. So those are not complete, and we are 72% of our current staff is at the highest step. We want to sustain whatever progress we have from previous years. We want to support our site-based decision-making around supplies and materials and the individual needs of the students. We need to look at equitable resources, not just flat funding for every single student, but we look at what's equitable for our schools and our students. And we are looking, as we've said many times, to just enhance the learning opportunities of all of our students. Reallocate, we've begun the process. It's January, looking at numbers for next year, looking at our retirements, where we can have cost savings, where our needs are, and we're always looking to reallocate our resources first as we move forward in making decisions. And at this time, I'll let Patrick take over the next section.
Sure. So one of the things that it's always good to think about as school committee members is to think about budgets over the next few years also. So don't just focus on this year, focus on the next three years or so. What are the needs of the kids? And one of the drivers of that is enrollment patterns, right? So if you look at Falmouth's enrollment patterns, what is clear is that we have this bubble of enrollment that is making its way through the high school. Will be in 10th grade next year. We sort of have another level of enrollment that is in that sort of 5 through 8 or so period cohort, and then we have sort of a K through 4 cohort that's a different level of enrollment. So I look at that. You know, there's some challenges to that, but there's also opportunities. So if we can't do everything this year, over time we can get things done. And Falmouth as a community has been very generous to the school district, and over time we can get stuff done. The historical trends are pretty straightforward there. And the estimate for fiscal year 21 is that enrollment will go down a little bit, but probably won't go down as much as it did sort of year over year the past year. Student demographics, this is kind of an interesting thing. We talked about it last time a little bit about what was the change in fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20 on free and reduced lunch, and we'll see. I'm curious to see how that impacts our Chapter 70. No one is willing to make an estimate until the governor's budget comes out at the end of January. So your guess is as good as mine. Unbelievable. Sources of funds, the town of Falmouth contributes all the money. Some of the Chapter 70 goes to the town of Falmouth, and then that is part of the overall allocations. This isn't what the pie chart looks like in other communities. but we're very fortunate to have this because it's a much more stable funding pie chart. And money goes to staff. It's not that complicated. That's not changing dramatically. We staff intensely in Falmouth, and we will continue to.
So I'll talk about the superintendent priorities, which I always find that title slide a bit interesting because they're really not my priorities. They're the priorities that have come from the community and rolled up and that we have discussed and set. So as the same, nothing has changed here. We want to add new positions to offer new opportunities for students. We want to increase units to meet the current service delivery needs. And what I'd like to talk about a little bit, I know I've said this before, and I think that it's very important that I think I look at Falmouth in offering an excellent education is that we're really looking at a three-prong process here. We want to meet the needs of every student, so we evaluate that often and make sure that the needs of the students are provided everything that they need for a good, solid, basic education. We also look at the needs of our students. We celebrated this year, as many of you know, the excellent scores, the excellent growth that we have had in this district, and we want to continue that. So we need to constantly look at the type of resources that we need to continue looking at our curriculum, looking at our practices, looking at the professional development that we provide for teachers so that we get the best gains for our students. And then the third prong is we don't want to just have that basic education. We want to offer opportunities for students. So above and beyond, right? So even if our enrollment goes down, our students still deserve to have every opportunity that a large district would have or a wealthier district would have. So the opportunities that that we're getting ready to talk about, it's always looking at that balance, right? It's those additional opportunities that often keep students engaged in school and then help them to do well in all the other subjects, right? Because of that level of engagement. So as we move forward through this, looking at the staffing, we in December celebrated our partnership with Woods Hole, and I have continuously discussed that to sustain or to grow this partnership, that we need to have someone that can help, one, be a liaison to all the institutes in Woods Hole and across the Falmouth community, help develop based on the standards, help develop those the units that we need, and help provide teachers with professional development and in-class support in order to not only have the teaching part in the classroom, but to grow those living classrooms that we talked. So Sonia's been doing a great job. She's not going to be able to sustain at the level of support moving forward. And so very soon, in the next couple meetings, I'll be coming to you with a job description and an ask for approval for this position. We will be able to move forward with the position based on the increase in the funding that we're receiving from town, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The language, we've talked about that as being an opportunity, another opportunity for students, beginning at kindergarten, but growing that across kindergarten through 12th grade. And so we are continuing to look at that opportunity for students. In the expanded opportunities, I think we mentioned before that the request for students is the CVTE early childhood, and we've had more students request that than we can actually provide the space in the program. We also have our community that has students or children that could be a part of the program. So we have the demand by the community, we have the demand by our students, and so it's a good fit. And so because that is a request and of an interest of our students, it seems to be an area that we would want to grow in. So that's another expanded opportunity. Under our staffing needs, you mentioned about the minutes, and so we've done an evaluation around the our L students, and we are in need of another half-time ELD teacher. We need to look at our Title I positions. Our grants are not covering all the positions that we really need to offer the reading and math support, and so we've really got to take a look at that. We need an additional occupational therapist based on the needs of our students, and based on the needs of the students and our current situations at the Falmouth High School. We do need an additional school adjustment counselor. Contractual services that we had talked about before. We're in need of looking at the contractual services for our intense wraparound services for our students. We are looking to, based on the feedback last time we talked, is to go out to RFP to continue to see if we can meet the demand that we have with our students. And then just looking at the out-of-district placements and the rising costs there. We're going to have to continue to look at that. I'll pass it back over to Patrick now.
So remember, we're building a budget in December, January that is going to take us, start in July and take us through the following year. So it effectively doesn't truly close out until fall of 2021. So we're thinking way down the road. So staff reallocation is, since we're in basketball season, if we have 3 guards and we need a center, we need to figure out a way to drop a guard and get a center. So we always have to do those types of things. That is just good management. So the expectation I just had, the overall budget does not allow for us to add new staff without doing some reallocation or getting a little bit of extra money, which the superintendent alluded to. And then the superintendent has already talked about the specific needs of our children really drive the reallocation and the focused efforts that we make around budgeting. So the ELL population is a perfect example of that. You have to complement the Board of Selectmen and or the Select Board, I'm sorry, and the town CFO. The town funding over the past 5 years or so have been very stable and very steady, and that is hugely important to running a high-quality school district. School choice is another thing that's been extraordinarily important to this school district over the last 5 years or so. Without that, the technology that we've seen increase in our schools in a dramatic fashion would not have happened. The updates to our curriculum would not have happened. The ability to grow that program for Falmouth has been a very, very important decision that was made 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer. I'm seeing Susan Augusta, I think she had something to do with that, that it paid huge benefits going forward. We can go to the next slide. So enrollment expectations for next year are similar. Out of district tuitions fluctuate, and that we'll talk about at some other point down the road. That's really can be a function of when children come into the out of district placements, and when they graduate or age out. And those things can drive that budget in an extraordinary way. The expectation under this budget is that our entitlement grants, Title 1 through 4, will not change dramatically. Chapter 70, we really have to think about that from a timing perspective, that the governor's budget comes out but doesn't really get passed till July, well after our budget season happens. So you really have to think of that in over the next couple of fiscal years if that does benefit the district. Still in collective bargaining, and we talked about the bus RFP. So I think the good news that the compliments to the superintendent is that the request will be, and you'll have the details available to you in the entire budget document at the end of the week, will be a 2.5% increase. The town is comfortable with that. The superintendent is pleased with that, in that it allows us to move forward on some of our most pressing needs around the Woods Hole arrangement. And we believe strongly that with good management of reallocation, that we will be able to incrementally begin to meet some of our other needs too. So you'll see this presentation or some version of this presentation 1, 2, at least 3 more times. February 7th, budget hearing, whatever the meeting is, the first meeting in February. And the budget books will be, they're all in my office. They'll be available on Friday. We're doing a...
Great. Could I just say something to...
asking questions, I just have a question.
Yes.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Patrick, in regards, about 5 or 6 years ago, when the town voted an override for out-of-school placements, it's $670,000. Can some of that money be used for the fluctuating?
Yep. We are projecting that may need to be tapped, but it probably wouldn't be, the earliest it would be needed would be the spring of spring of 2021 at the earliest. So we're still looking at that. So we have time on that.
Just as a reminder, it has to go to town
Yep.
meeting, as I recall, so.
Perfect.
Okay.
Good. I couldn't have scripted you better.
And as Patrick said about the budget presentation being, again, maybe 3 times, I hope the public, that's why we keep doing this. I mean, we can usually get it by the 2nd time. The school committee. But just as an encouragement that the public can come and put their input. That's why we keep doing this. And anyway, I just had to put that 2 cents in for the public.
Thank you. That's right.
Sharon has set up meetings with the PTO in school councils in early February also. So the superintendent and I will be doing a roadshow.
Okay. Excellent. John?
Just as we talk about technology and investment and whatnot, I just want to remind you that my company Seacrest, we had a 3-year cycle, and I'm not sure if it's going to be 36 PCs and 36 monitors next time, but I've introduced Mike Falcone and Cindy Tukas as well to our IT director, Mike Ferrier, and they're on a cycle of we're going to donate it. We're up this year to donate another, it'd probably be in the same range, because we're just going to keep doing that. So just thought I'd bring that attention before you go spend on it.
We have that meeting with Mike is scheduled for February. We make those decisions in March.
Great. Andrea?
Under new opportunities, a question that I get asked, and I don't feel like I've got enough to answer it clearly, and you may hear about these at some of the community meetings, because the under staffing the Woods Hole project coordinator, I think there's a lot of background that's come out in these meetings and the signing of the MOU. Can you give a little bit more of the background in terms of the world languages and the addition of Portuguese and sort of where that's going in the district and why that's chosen as a new opportunity direction?
So there's a lot of research and support with starting languages at the very youngest age. age 3, although we won't be starting at age 3, is a great time to start a language. The middle school, it's much harder for students, especially our struggling students, to start a language at 7th grade. And so the earlier, there's a lot of connections with language and specifically our sciences and our math, connection of students being able to do better. And so it kind of pushes that realm. And so, one, that's why we want to start languages early, because there's a lot of academic benefit across the board. But more specifically to a language, learning a language is thought to be a lot of fun and a lot of enjoyment, especially as you learn it as a younger age. And it's very engaging, and it is opportunities. It is also one of the items that parents look at for when they choose a district, are whether languages are offered or not. And so I also think that that's then an opportunity we need to look at as we continue moving forward. The reason for Portuguese is because of the very rich history in this particular area with the Portuguese language. It continues to grow in Massachusetts in general, but it continues to grow in Falmouth. And so at a very young age, teaching a language through culture base and being able to learn about the culture, we're learning about the history, but we're also learning the language. And so it makes it much easier for younger students to learn a language. And it also just celebrates our population. So, and gives a way for our students to be able to communicate with one another. And I think it just honors for those students their culture, and it's by far the #1 language in this district. The Portuguese language. Now, if you start with Portuguese language, it does not mean that you can't switch languages later, and that's really proven. When you learn to learn a language, then hitting 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, you certainly have opportunities to switch the language, and a language comes much easier after that point. So, because we will be bringing the Portuguese language to the elementary school, there'll still be a variety of languages that's going to be offered as students continue to age. Thank you. Did I answer the question? All right, great.
Can I just make a comment to the historical Portuguese? When I was a kid at East Falmouth, I was probably one of the only kids who was not Portuguese, who was the Irish kid with a very funny last name, who was not related to half the town. I love to see it coming back. I wish that it came back years ago so that my kids could have had the opportunity at elementary school to learn it. It is so prevalent in this town. It is such a part of our history and our foundation. I'm so proud that it's coming back. I love that it's being implemented. I love that we're encouraging it. I want to see it through. I'm excited to see where it takes students, and I thank you for bringing it back, because even though I'm still the Irish kid in East Falmouth, I have a strong connection with the Portuguese community, and I'm really proud that it's coming back. So
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you. And thank you. Appreciate that. We're going to act on policies D and E. Motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve policy sections D and E.
Is there a second?
A second?
Discussion.
I caught one typo in GBA. It's just a typo. Will it catch it when you hit GBA? No.
This
Wait,
is D and E.
We're on D and E.
Oh, see, this is what I get for writing my notes all on the same thing. Sorry.
We're on D and E.
I'll give it to you in a minute then.
Okay. We'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Did we have a motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
We got
I'm sorry. I'm glad. Thank you.
Okay, presentation on policy F.
Bill, I abstained from that. You didn't abstain, I
Okay,
abstained.
sorry.
No worries.
Presentation on policies F, G, and H.
Tanya?
Thank you. We are presenting these 3 sections all in the same format in which we've presented the previous 5. Any that are standing policies we did not present as we've made no changes and they are current in their form. And then each section is subdivided by revised policies, new policies that are being introduced in alignment with new model language that MASC made available to the team in working through the process. There are some eliminated policies where some have been compressed or they are no longer relevant. And then finally, while it has previously been done in the former, we did leave the heading policies on hold, but we were able to, in the presentation of these 3 sections, our team was able to have gone through not only the first run, but all the ones that we had put on hold, we had been able to cycle back to. So this is, there won't be anything that we will re-present in these 3 sections.
Can I ask you a question? So the one that says, now I'm in the right one.
You have to give us the page.
Or the letter. So it's GCBA. This is the one that says hold for policy. So that one is no longer a hold for policy. It's all set.
CBA. B.
It's got green at the top.
Yes, we were able to come back to this one, so I should take that off of the table.
So it's so there's no changes that are going to happen to this one.
Except the ones that are mentioned.
Except for no changes other than what's already highlighted.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then just a small typo, maybe Kelly's typo as well, but on GBA, second paragraph, just gender identity is twice.
Oh, see, that's not what I noticed actually. It's the gender identity is misspelled.
It's misspelled, but it's also twice.
Ah, I didn't catch that one.
So
See?
just pick the one that's spelled correctly.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
So the reason that I was asking about the hold for policy is just because sorry, now I'm flipped back. So the GCBA is the one that talks about recommendations for salary adjustments for principals and central office staff. And I would love some more information about that because I guess I don't have an actually formulated question. So should I, when I can actually put it in words, then send it to Terry?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're going to have a special meeting because we're really trying to catch up, so as soon as you can get.
I'll just do it tonight while it's fresh in my head, once I can make it make sense in my brain, what my question actually is. It just seems, and maybe it will help to actually look at the old language. If I put them side by side, maybe it will make more sense to me.
Yeah, we do that too, so
Yeah.
that is a good idea.
I do think the wrong version of this one was accidentally put in. I think we need to relook at this one.
At this one?
Yeah, at your.
It just didn't seem to be the same as what I remembered in practice.
Yeah, it's
So,
not.
okay.
I think we got the wrong one in. So I think we may have to put that on hold. Our next meeting is on the 28th, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that correct? The
Yes.
subcommittee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a week.
We're going to need to look at that again, which will not give them enough time to look at it before, so I think we're going to have to pull this one.
GCBA.
Yeah, GCBA.
So
yeah, I
everybody
think
heard that they're pulling GCBA?
Yeah, we'll review, and then it'll come back under the holds.
It's the 27th is our next meeting, not the 28th.
Oh, 27th.
For anyone
It's
interested,
okay,
it's the
27th, sorry.
27th.
Okay,
It's a
27th.
Monday, yep.
Okay.
And we'll revisit that, because I didn't think that was correct.
Yeah.
GBCA.
Yes.
So we're okay with.
Yeah, so everything other than that one. Yeah.
Anybody on board with that? Okay. Thank you.
I'm surprised that's been the only one with all the number of policies that
I know,
the
that's
committee
so-
has reviewed, and that, I mean, it is incredible, this process that we've been going through and reviewing.
It's incredible.
It
It's
is
a word.
incredible. It just,
All right.
yeah.
We got it.
Okay.
I feel like we should have a merit badge.
Yeah, you can get yours after I'm done with negotiations.
Merit badges for those that have.
Every section.
Patches.
Yeah, a perseverance one is.
I like that.
Perhaps a beanie, maybe.
You guys are going to be done
Let's
with
go to the approval of minutes for December 10th, 2019. Motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from December 10th, 2019. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to stay because I wasn't here.
Okay. An abstention. We got one there. It passes. Superintendent's report?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So I attended the Rotary Holiday event on December 17th, and during that event, we were presented with a check of $750 for our Cape Kid meals. They not only financially have been supporting us, but they are here once a month at least to help bag the foods and meals and get them out. So we really appreciate the Rotary support. On January 7th, we began our Homework Advisory Committee. Our first task was to review the homework survey results. And our next meeting is in a few weeks, and we'll start looking at the research and the best practices around homework. So we have 5 sessions set up. We have a very progressive timeline. Lots of work, but I think we'll be able to move through. So I look forward to giving you some updates on all of that. I did attend the annual budget presentation with the Board of Selectmen on January 6th. I was very pleased with, again, how, as Patrick said, how supportive the town is of the school department and looking at additional revenues for this school district. As we had our joint meeting last year, that was one of the things, if you'll remember, we discussed. So looking at other revenues, the 1% for the that they added for the hotel tax. So that 1%, we are receiving a portion of that. And at the end of this season on the short-term rental tax, once they're able to go through the season and review what that looks like, because it'll really be the first full season, they did also publicly announce that that will be shared with some kind of proportion with the school department. So they are looking at new revenues and supporting us. And I just really want to give a shout out to Julian Suso and Jennifer Mullen, the FinCom members, and all the Board of Selectmen, because they really do believe in the schools and want to support the schools. And so I just want to get them a shout. So that presentation was on the 6th, and last night on the 13th they did vote to approve that budget. And so the 2.5 that Patrick mentioned tonight was voted on last night. So we're pleased with that. Dr. Woodward and I attended the No Place for Hate sponsored by Standard training this past Saturday. It was well attended. There was over 60 people in attendance. It was really focused on the community and what we can do as a community to help when there are situations of bullying or harassment or such. And just really, I mean, I think it was good suggestions. 2 great trainers they brought in, and it was great just to see so many community members out that really care about all of our community. And so we're looking to, they have connections that we can actually have professional development for our own staff, but also they have a student version, and so we're going to be looking into opportunities of students, peer opportunities for them to do the same type of training with peers. So we're, we were really happy with it. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or
no, again, I think it was a very nice opportunity to have community members that represented all factions of the community, if you will, and to really just talk about what, as average citizens and community members, what we can do and some actions that we can take to make sure that we're we're active bystanders in, as Lori said, in any instance of bullying, harassment, or discrimination. About some ways that you can, whether it's in the moment or after the fact, of ways that we can help to address that and have a much more inclusive community at large. So,
well said, thank you. Yeah. So, also presented last night, there is an affirmative action committee that the Board of Selectmen had sanctioned, and they have been meeting since June, I believe. It's a new committee. I know that there's been an affirmative action committee, but this, as they were presenting last night, new members, new co-chairs, really trying to look at, they're doing different events and trying to really get a focus on being much more inclusive, looking at diversity, and in support. So this committee is putting forth an article for town meeting. They will be submitting it this Friday. I wanted to be able to share with you the article that they're going to be submitting. I will say that Sandy Feynman Silva is actually heading up this particular piece of the Affirmative Action Committee. I also want to say that we have two representatives, Joanne Santa, our HR Director, and Joan Woodward, Director of Student Services, are both, they attend the meetings. And so the school department has been able to give some input. The original request was for an affirmative action officer that was going to be split between the town and the school department. After much discussions, and I believe that they've really heard, we could very much increase our capacity to address the issues. And I think that, and that's what we're interested in. We didn't need compliance officers either on the town or the school. We have people in those roles. So the legal side of it, is really kind of taken care of. What we really need is that outreach. And really too, that just being able to the groundswell, providing opportunities for students, providing opportunities for our employees, and most importantly, where we could certainly use help is reaching out to our families. And so that what they're presenting here is really an outreach person, so it would be a liaison. It would not be, and I just wanted to clear this up, this would not be a part of our school budget. And that is a change from what's been out there previously. The request that they're putting in is for the town budget to support this position. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that, because there has been changes. But it would be a liaison that we would be able to kind of tap into those resources, be able to work with, to think about the needs of the school department. And so this is the most recent article, and it will be submitted on Friday. The library trustees invited me to join their meeting, although I do have to correct that. It was actually the library fund that I visited today. I didn't understand the distinction until I actually attended the meeting. So there are the library trustees, there is the library fund, there are the Friends of the Falmouth Library, of which now I will be attending the other two meetings as well. And I look forward to working more with Linda as the director of the public libraries, but just trying to make those connections. Again, our students are the future library goers, and the more connections we can make, the more opportunities we can find with the library. So we are going to continue to build a relationship there and see how we can expand that. Yep. So that's good. And then I have a couple other things. I just want a reminder that next Tuesday, January 21st, I cannot believe it's already going to be January 21st, but it really is, that we have our school committee workshop where we're going to look at the core value surveys. We're going to finalize our core value statements. We're going to look to revise the mission statement and to begin writing that vision statement. So that is next Tuesday at 5:30 here. So looking forward to that. And the week of February 3rd to the 7th is No Guff Week, which I just wanted to make that announcement so we all know. And I have one other special announcement to make. This is the incredible team that I have to work with. This logo here, Sonia, myself, and Mike Falcone, we were setting, and as we're looking at the refresh plan with the devices and the one-to-one devices from 5th grade through 12th grade, and then the increased devices at the elementary school. But the 5th through 12, obviously the opportunities that the devices can go home. And we were talking about how can we connect with our community with opportunities where students would be able to visit sites that would have Wi-Fi. And so Dr. Tallier and Mr. Falcone took off with this. And Derek, our latest teaching and learning specialist. So they went out and they started, so they actually had a student at the high school, different students submit a different logo. And so this is the winner. And so these are fresh off the press, but Isabella Ashton was the winner of the, and I just found that out yesterday who won. Like, so it was all very done secretly. It was just said, so those of you who don't know, this is Kelly's daughter.
I fly on the radar with the other name.
Yeah, you do, but I'm actually making an announcement because I did, but we're very proud, and if you can see this is just an awesome logo. And so it was all done without anybody knowing any names or whatsoever. Dr. Tallier and I both just found out yesterday who the winner was through the whole process. But anyway.
She knew.
Well, yes, I'm sure she did. She knew she did that. But this logo, so any community, a restaurant or such that wants to provide Wi-Fi, they'll be given this so they can put it in the window. Our students will know it's a safe place to go and have internet service. So we are going to provide a list. We're up to, I think, 5, 7.
Oh, I think
more.
we're up to. I think we have 9 partners.
Oh, we're up to 9. So anyway, so we're continuing to. So this is really about partnering with the Falmouth Public School, and I love it how you sit around the table and you're talking about ideas, and we have an incredible staff that make those ideas come true. So thank you.
This is
and
amazing.
very excited about this.
It's a great job. Especially getting the logo, our Clipper logo is a tough one to have that so clear because there's so many intricacies to it.
Absolutely.
I'll make a plug for the graphics program.
Yeah, absolutely.
That class and I can't remember her name. It's Hart. She's incredible.
Yes.
Yeah. And the kids love it.
Yeah,
and
they do.
It is her favorite part of the day.
Yeah, and I have to say, when we go talk about the opportunities, we're back to that graphics program is not a basic class that's offered everywhere. It is one of those additional classes, those opportunities that kids have a choice for. And
awesome.
This is extremely professional. Like, this is just awesome. But so our staff and students work together and make something happen that's good for everyone. So awesome.
Very cool.
This is great.
Any questions? Any questions for the superintendent? Anything else? Okay. Committee member reports? Anyone? John?
Just an update on the date for the legislative breakfast at the Collaborative is the 31st. So it's going to be Friday, January 31st, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Excuse me. It's going to, amongst the topics will be the CAPES demographics, Student Opportunity Act, and again, so that's at the Bumps River Road location, and you'll be all invited. And it's Friday the 31st, 10 a.m.
Okay. Any other committee reports?
I think policy speaks for itself.
Yes, it does. Okay. Thank you, policy. Request for follow-up information?
I just have a quick question related to substitutes and ALICE training. So the question came up with a substitute in a school that was there during the drill, and they didn't really know what to do because the training has shifted, and she was wondering if there was an opportunity for substitutes to receive a modified version of ALICE training or something related to that. Patrick's
Patrick,
waking
answer
up.
Yeah, you know what, that's been a really important target in between videos, getting these types of things.
Right.
We're trying to give sort of either 5-minute incremental things. A lot of the schools have substitute folders that also give some of that information. So that has been a focus. So thanks for bringing that up.
Great,
And
thank you.
I'm not sure where the video aspect of this is in terms of that being part of the onboarding process.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Anybody else? Any subcommittee report updates? Anything on that? Future items? Announcements?
I have two.
Go ahead.
So one is that Laura just mentioned the homework advisory meetings, and those would be great opportunities for observation, since that's part of Lori's goals for this year. So maybe we could get a list of those dates for people who haven't done their observation yet. I know a number of people already have. So that was one. And then the other was I had sent something around to see if anyone wanted to do the Cape Kids meal bagging as a school committee group. And I had sent out the date of January the 23rd. And it turns out that that's the day that everyone will be at the mentoring thing up in Boston. So I got an email from Drade today that said that it would actually be Friday the 24th in the morning. And I didn't know if any takers.
I'm working that day.
Yes?
I'm off the 23rd. I'm working.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay, sorry. So there's at least 2 of us, and if anyone else wants to jump in.
I'm signed up for delivering that later that morning, so I could probably come in a little
Maybe a little
earlier.
early?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I will let her know that we're sending a team.
All right.
Thank you. I think it'd be nice. It's nice to not just be part of the concept, but actually get to do something together. That's awesome. You did.
Anything else?
That's awesome.
And I'll leave you with a quote. Quote, "Much education today is monumentally ineffective. All too often we are giving young people cut flowers when we should be teaching them to grow their own plants." John Gardner. Motion to adjourn.
Ironic his name was Gardner.
I love that.
I make a
was
motion
waiting
to
for
adjourn.
somebody to pick that up. Thank you, John.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.